Hello, Gangstas. Welcome to the Spiritual Gangsta Book Club. This is Shannon, aka the Spiritual Gangsta, your host tonight, reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. The last time that we were here, I actually forgot to record the space again. So here we are, and I'm reading to you guys without the attendance of the audience. We had a really awesome reading, so I'm just gonna catch up like I normally would. So the week prior, we're in week 14. So the week prior on Sunday, we read Beyond Happiness and Unhappiness, There is Peace. And we started reading last week on page 169. This is where we finished up chapter 8 about enlightened relationships, going deeper into the feminine pain body and learning how the feminine can allow herself to become present during the times of discomfort to transmute the pain, allowing herself to become fully into the now. We also learned why it is important for us to come into peace with ourselves, regardless of having a relationship or not. We don't need a relationship for happiness, although when we become into peace, we still may feel a pull within for a relationship, and that is perfectly okay. We continued reading into chapter 9, which is where we are learning to move beyond happiness and unhappiness in order to find peace. Eckhart breaks down the ability to know that there is a difference between good and bad, and it's in understanding these experiences just as they are and not needing to judge them as positive or negative. That's where we thrive. So we stopped reading on page 180 last Sunday. And for you listening in today, I'm going to continue that reading. So those of you following along in the book, we are in chapter 9, Beyond Happiness and Unhappiness, There is Peace. Page 180, The End of Your Life Drama. In that state of acceptance and inner peace, even though you may not call it bad, can anything still come into your life that would be called bad from a perspective of ordinary consciousness? Most of the so-called bad things that happen in people's lives are due to unconsciousness. They are self-created, or rather, ego-created. I sometimes refer to those things as drama. When you are fully conscious, drama does not come into your life anymore. Let me remind you briefly how the ego operates and how it creates drama. Ego is the unobserved mind that runs your life when you are not present as the witnessing consciousness, the watcher. The ego perceives itself as a separate fragment in a hostile universe, with no real interconnected to any other being, surrounded by other egos which it either sees as a potential threat or which it will attempt to use for its own ends. The basic ego patterns are designed to combat its own deep-seated fear and sense of lack. They are resistance, control, power, greed, defense, attack. Some of the ego strategies are extremely clever, yet they never truly solve any of its problems, simply because the ego itself is the problem. When egos come together, whether in personal relationships or in organizations or institutions, bad things happen sooner or later. Drama of one kind or another, in the form of conflict, problems, power struggles, emotional or physical violence, and so on. This includes collective evils such as war, genocide, and exploitation, all due to masked unconsciousness. Furthermore, many types of illness are caused by the ego's continuous resistance, which creates restrictions and blockages in the flow of energy through the body. When you reconnect with being and are no longer run by your mind, you cease to create those things. You do not create or participate in drama anymore. Whenever two or more egos come together, drama of one kind or another ensues. But even if you live totally alone, you still create your own drama. When you feel sorry for yourself, that's drama. When you feel guilty or anxious, that's drama. When you let the past or future obscure the present, you're creating time, psychological time, the stuff out of which drama is made. When you're not honoring the present moment by allowing it to be, you're creating drama. Most people are in love with their particular life drama. Their story is their identity. The ego runs their life. They have their whole sense of self invested in it. Even their usually unsuccessful search for an answer, a solution, or a healing becomes part of it. What they fear and resist most is the end of their drama. As long as they are the mind, what they fear and resist most is their own awakening. When you live in complete acceptance of what is, that is the end of all drama in your life. Nobody can even have an argument with you, no matter how hard he or she tries. You cannot have an argument with a fully conscious person. An argument implies identification with your mind and a mental position, as well as resistance and reaction to the other person's position. The result is that the polar opposites become mutually energized. These are the mechanics of unconsciousness. You can still make your point clearly and firmly, but there are no reactive force behind it. No fully conscious, you cease to be in conflict. When you are fully conscious, you cease to be in conflict. No one who is at one with himself can even conceive of conflict. From A Course in Miracles. This refers not only to conflict with other people, but more fundamentally the conflict within you, which ceases when there is no longer any clash between the demands and expectations of your mind and what is. Impermanence and the cycles of life. However, as long as you are in physical dimension and linked to the collective human psyche, the physical pain, although rare, is still possible. This is not to be confused with suffering, with mental emotional pain. All suffering is ego created and is due to resistance. Also, as long as you are in this dimension, you are still subject to its clinical nature and to the law of impermanence of all things. But you no longer perceive this as bad. It just is. Through allowing the isness of all things, a deeper dimension underneath the play of opposites reveals itself to you as an abiding presence, an unchanging steepness. Although allowing the isness of all things, a deeper dimension underneath the play of opposites reveals itself to you as an abiding presence, an unchanging deep stillness, an uncaused joy beyond good and bad. This is the joy of being, the peace of God. On the level of form, there is birth and death, creation and destruction, growth and dissolution, of seemingly separate forms. This is reflected everywhere, in the cycle of life, of star or of a planet, a physical body, a tree, a flower, in the rise and fall of nations, political systems, civilizations, and inevitable cycles of gain and loss in the life of an individual. There are cycles of success, when things come to you and thrive, and cycles of failure, when they wither and disintegrate. And you have to let them go in order to make room for the new things to arise, or for transformation to happen. If you cling and resist at that point, it means you're refusing to go with the flow of life, and you will suffer. It is not true that the up cycle is good and the down cycle is bad, except in the mind's judgment. Growth is usually considered positive, but nothing can grow forever. If growth, of whatever kind, were to go on, it would eventually become monstrous and destructive. Dissolution is needed for new growth to happen. One cannot exist without the other. The down cycle is absolutely essential for spiritual realization. You must have failed deeply on some level or experienced some deep loss or pain to be drawn to the spiritual dimension. Or perhaps your very success came from empty, meaningless, and so turned out to be failure. Failure lies concealed in every success, and success in every failure. In this world, which is to say on the level of form, everybody fails, sooner or later. Of course, and every achievement eventually comes to naught. All forms are impermanent. You can still be active and enjoy manifesting and creating new forms and circumstances, but you won't be identified with them. You do not need them to give you a sense of self. They are not your life, only your life situation. Your physical energy is also subject to cycles. It cannot always be at peak. There will be times of low as well as high energy. There will be periods when you are highly active and creative, but there may also be times when everything seems stagnant, when it seems that you are not getting anywhere, not achieving anything. A cycle can last for anything from a few hours to a few years. There are large cycles and small cycles within these large ones. Many illnesses are created through fighting against the cycles of low energy, which are vital for regeneration. The compulsion to do and the tenacity to derive your sense of self-worth and identity from external factors, such as an achievement, is an inevitable illusion as long as you are identified with the mind. This makes it hard or impossible for you to accept the low cycles and allow them to be. Thus, the intelligence of the organism may take over as a self-protective measure and create an illness in order to force you to stop, so that necessary regeneration can take place. This cynical nature of the universe is closely linked with the impermanence of all things and situations. The Buddha made this a central part of his teaching. All conditions are highly unstable and in constant flux, or as he put it, impermanence is a characteristic of every condition, every situation you will ever encounter in your life. It will change, disappear, or no longer satisfy you. Impermanence is also central to Jesus' teaching. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal. As long as a condition is judged as good by your mind, whether it be a relationship, a possession, a social rule, a place, or your physical body, the mind attaches itself to and identifies with it. It makes you happy, makes you feel good about yourself, and it may become part of who you are or who you think. But nothing lasts in this dimension where moth and rust consume. Either it ends or it changes, or it may undergo a polarity shift. The same condition that was good yesterday or last year has suddenly or gradually turned into bad. The same condition that made you happy then makes you unhappy. The prosperity of today becomes the empty consumerism of tomorrow. The happy wedding, the honeymoon become the unhappy divorce and the unhappy coexistence. Or a condition appears, so its absence makes you happy. A condition disappears, so its absence makes you unhappy. When a condition or situation that the mind has attached itself to and identified with changes or disappears, the mind cannot accept it. It will cling to the disappearing condition and resist the change. It is almost as if a limb were being torn off your body. We sometimes hear of people who have lost all their money or whose reputations have been ruined, committing suicide. This is extreme cases. Others, whenever a major loss of one kind or another occur, become very deeply unhappy or make themselves ill. They cannot distinguish between their life and the life situation. I recently read about a famous actress who died in her 80s. As her beauty started to fade and become ravaged by old age, she grew desperately unhappy and became a recluse. She too had identified with a condition, her external appearance. First, the condition gave her a happy sense of self, then an unhappy one. If she had been able to connect with the formless and timeless life within, she could have watched and allowed the fading of her external from a place of serenity and peace. Moreover, her external form would have become increasingly transparent to the light shining through from her ageless true nature. So her beauty would not have really faded, but simply become transformed into spiritual beauty. However, nobody told her that this was possible. The most essential kind of knowledge is not widely accessible. There's a pause here, and I really wanted to highlight a few things in this chapter where he said what they fear most and resist most is the end of their drama, because as long as they are their mind, what they fear and resist most is their own awakening. And I see this a lot with people. When we begin to awaken and we begin to look at our life and we start judging things as good and bad. And most of it is a recollection. It's almost like going through a timeline of every mistake you've ever made. And many people get very fearful and they turn away before they even reach the joy. The thing is once we can separate the judgment of these conditions and just look at them as what they are, we can experience that joy we are craving, the joy we deserve, our birthright. The other part where he talks about the illness, when we become stuck in these cycles of like highs and lows and we're trying to fight through that low energy and we can create illness. This is so true. And I love how, we have these moments in astrology, like right now Mercury is retrograde, and people can become so very, oh my God, it's retrograde, but now's the time to really slow down and take the time to work through ourselves and take space for ourselves and to rest and to heal. And we're granted those things automatically, but when we try to push and force things, that's when we become ill, not listening fully to our body and just accepting what is. So continuing on page 186, the Buddha taught that even your happiness is dukkha, D-U-K-K-H-A, a Pali word meaning suffering or unsatisfactoriness. It is an inseparable from its opposite. It's inseparable from its opposite. This means that your happiness and your unhappiness are in fact one. Only the illusion of time separates them. This is not being negative. It's simply recognizing the nature of things so that you don't pursue an illusion for the rest of your life. Nor is it saying that you should no longer appreciate pleasant or beautiful things or conditions, but to seek something through them that they cannot give, an identity, a sense of permanency and fulfillment. It's a recipe for frustration and suffering. The whole advertising industry and consumer society would collapse if people became enlightened and no longer sought to find their identity through things. The more you seek happiness in this way, the more it will elude you. Nothing out there will ever satisfy you except temporarily and superficially. But you may need to experience many disillusionments before you realize that truth. Things and conditions can give you pleasure, but they will not. But they will also give you pain. Things and condition can give you pleasure, but they cannot give you joy. Nothing can give you joy. Joy is uncaused and arises from within as the joy of being. It is an essential part of the inner state of peace, the state that has been called the peace of God. It is your natural state, not something that you need to work hard for or struggle to attain. Many people never realize that there can be no salvation in anything they do, possess, or attain. Those who do realize it often become a world weary and depressed. If nothing can give you true fulfillment, what is left to strive for? What is the point of anything? The Old Testament prophet must have arrived at such realization when he wrote, "I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after wind." When you reach this point, you are one step away from despair and one step away from enlightenment. A Buddhist monk once told me, "All I have learned in the 20 years that I have been a monk, I can sum up in one sentence. All that arises passes away. This I know." What he meant, of course, was this: I have learned to offer no resistance to what is. I have learned to allow the present moment to be and to accept the impermanent nature of all things and conditions. Thus, I have found peace. To offer no resistance to life is to be in a state of grace, ease, and lightness. This state is then no longer dependent upon things being a certain way, good or bad. It seems almost paradoxical, yet when your inner dependency on form is gone, the general conditions of your life, the outer forms, tend to improve greatly. Things, people, or conditions that you thought you needed for your happiness now come to you with no struggle or effort on your part. and you're free to enjoy and appreciate them while they last. All those things, of course, will still pass away. Cycles will come and go, but with dependency gone, there's no fear of loss anymore. Life flows with ease. The happiness that is derived from some secondary source is never very deep. It is only a pale reflection of the joy of being, the vibrant peace that you find within as you enter the state of non-resistance. Being takes you beyond the polar opposites of the mind and frees you from dependency on form. Even if everything were to collapse and crumble all around you, you would still feel a deep inner core of peace. You may not be happy, but you will be at peace. And there's a pause here. I really like this part where he's talking about things and conditions give you pleasure, but they cannot give you joy. Nothing can give you joy. Joy is uncaused and arises from within as the joy of being. And this is very true. On my path to enlightenment, I was playing around with a lot of words and vibrations, and they say peace, love, and joy are that of Christ consciousness. And I started out, and I'm writing a book about this too. I started learning about love and what love felt like and the vibration of that. And I moved to peace, and I felt peace within and all around. And then I moved to joy, and joy really is like, it's a state of being. It's the same as love, but like in America, we've attached this word love to so many different aspects of our life that it's confusing. But love is not a feeling, it's a state of being, the same as joy. So continuing reading on page 188, using and relinquishing negativity. All inner resistance is experienced as negativity in one form or another. All negativity is resistance. In this context, the two words are almost synonymous. Negativity ranges from irritation or impatience to fierce anger, from a depressed mood or sullen resentment to suicidal despair. Sometimes the resistance triggers an emotional pain body, in which case even a minor situation can produce intense negativity such as anger, depression, or deep grief. The ego believes that through negativity it can manipulate reality and get what it wants. It believes that through it, it can attract a desirable condition or dissolve an undesirable one. A Course in Miracles rightly points out that whenever you are unhappy, there is the unconscious belief that the unhappiness buys you what you want. If you, the mind, did not believe that the unhappiness works, why would you create it? The fact is, of course, that negativity does not work. Instead of attracting a desirable condition, it stops it from arising. Instead of dissolving in an undesirable one, it keeps it in place. Its only useful function is that it strengthens the ego, and this is why the ego loves it. Once you have identified with some form of negativity, you do not want to let it go, and on a deeply unconscious level, you do not want a positive change. It would threaten your identity as a depressed, angry, or hard-done-by person. You will then ignore, deny, or sabotage the positive in your life. This is a common phenomenon. It's also insane. Negativity is totally unnatural. It is a psychic pollutant, and there is a deep link between the poisoning and destruction of nature and the vast negativity that has accumulated in the collective human psyche. No other life form on the planet knows negativity, only humans. Just as no other life form violates and poisons the earth as it sustains it. Have you ever seen an unhappy flower or a stressed oak tree? Have you come across a depressed dolphin, a frog that has a problem with self-esteem, a cat that cannot relax, or a bird that carries hatred or resentment? The only animals that may occasionally experience something akin to negativity or show signs of neurotic behavior are those that live in close contact with humans, and so link into the human mind and its insanity. Watch any plant or animal and let it teach you acceptance of what is. Surrender to the now. Let it teach you being. Let it teach you integrity, which means to be one, to be yourself, to be real. Let it teach you how to live, how to die, and how not to make living and dying into a problem. I have lived with several Zen masters, and all of them were cats. Even ducks have taught me important spiritual lessons. Just watching them is a meditation. How peacefully they float along, at ease, with themselves totally present in the now, dignified and perfect as only a mindless creature can be. Occasionally, however, two ducks will get in a fight, sometimes for no apparent reason, or because one duck has strayed into another's private space. The fight usually lasts only for a second, and then the ducks separate, swim off in opposite directions, and vigorously flap their wings. They then continue to swim on peacefully as if it had never happened. When I observed that for the first time, I realized by flapping their wings, they're releasing a surplus of energy, thus preventing it from becoming trapped in the body and turning into negativity. This is natural wisdom, and it's easy for them because they do not have a mind that keeps the past alive unnecessarily and build an identity around it. Couldn't a negative emotion also contain an important message? For example, if I often feel depressed, it may be signal that there's something wrong with my life, and it may force me to look at my life situation and make some changes. So I need to listen to what the emotion is telling me and not just dismiss it as negative. Yes, reoccurring negative emotions do sometimes contain a message, as do illnesses. But any changes that you make, whether they have to do with your work, relationship, your surroundings, are ultimately cosmetic unless they arise out of a change of your level of consciousness. And as far as that is concerned, it can only mean one thing: become more present. When you have reached a certain degree of presence, you don't need negativity anymore to tell you what is needed in your life situation. But as long as negativity is there, use it. Use it as a signal that reminds you to be more present. Okay, well, how do we stop negativity from arising? And how do we get rid of it once it's there? As I said, you stop it from arising by being present, but don't become discouraged. There are yet few people on the planet who could sustain a state of conscious presence, although some are getting close to it, and soon I believe there will be many more. Whenever you notice that some form of negativity has arisen within you, look to it not as failure, but as helpful signal telling you, wake up, get out of your mind, and be present. There's a novel by Aldous Huxley called Island. Written in his later years, he became very interested in spiritual teaching. It tells the story of a man shipwrecked on a remote island cut off from the rest of the world. This island contains a unique civilization. The unusual thing about it is that the inhabitants, unlike the rest of the world, are sane. The first thing the man notices are the colorful parrots perched up in the trees, who seem to be constantly croaking the words, "Attention, here and now. Attention, here and now." We later learned that the islanders taught them these words in order to be reminded continuously to stay present. So whenever you feel negativity arising within you, whether caused by external factor, a thought, or even nothing in particular, look at the voice saying, "Attention, here and now, wake up." Even the slightest irritation is significant and needs to be acknowledged and looked at. Otherwise, there's a buildup of unobserved reactions. As I said before, you may be able to just drop it once you realize that you don't want to have this energy field inside you and it serves no purpose, but then make sure you drop it completely. If you cannot drop it completely, accept that it's there and take your attention onto this feeling, as I pointed out earlier. As an alternative of dropping the negative reaction, you can make it disappear by imagining yourself becoming transparent to the external cause of the reaction. I recommend that you practice with a little trivial things at first. Let's say you're sitting quietly and then suddenly there's a car alarm across the street. Irritation arises. What is the purpose of this irritation? None whatsoever. Why did you create it? You didn't. The mind did. It was totally automatic, totally unconscious. Well, why did the mind create it? Because it holds the unconscious belief that resistance, which you experience as negativity or unhappiness, is in some form or will somehow dissolve the undesirable condition. This is a delusion. The resistance that it creates, the irritation or anger in this case, is far more disturbing than the original cause that it is attempting to dissolve. All this can be transformed into spiritual practice. Feel yourself become transparent, as it were, without the solidity of material body. Now, allow the noise or whatever causes the negative reaction to pass right through you. Now it's no longer hitting a solid wall inside you. As I said, practice with little things. The car alarm, dog barking, children screaming, the traffic jam. Instead of having a wall of resistance inside you that gets constantly and painfully hit by things that should not be happening, let it just pass through you. Somebody says something to you that's rude or designed to hurt you, instead of going into unconscious reaction and negativity such as attack, defense, withdrawal, let it pass through you. Offer no resistance. It is as if there is nobody there to hurt you anymore. That is forgiveness. In this way, you become invulnerable. You can still tell that person that their behavior is unacceptable, but now that person no longer has the power to control your inner state. You're then in your power, not in someone else's, nor are you run by your own mind. Whether it's a car alarm, a rude person, flood, earthquake, losing your possessions, the resistance mechanism is the same. I have been practicing meditation. I've been to workshops. I've read many books on spirituality. I try to be in a state of non-resistance, but if you ask me whether I have found true and lasting inner peace, my honest answer would be no. Why haven't I found it? What else can I do? You're still seeking outside, and you cannot get out of the seeking mode. Maybe the next workshop will have the answer, or the next technique. To you, I would say, don't look for peace. Don't look for any other state than the one you are in now. Otherwise, you will set up inner conflict and unconscious resistance. Forgive yourself for not being at peace. The moment you completely accept your non-peace becomes transmuted into peace. Anything you accept fully will get you there, will take you into peace. You may have heard the phrase, turn the other cheek. What a great teacher of enlightenment used 2,000 years ago. I don't know if we've read this part or not. I actually think, yeah, we ended there. This miracle of surrender. So we're stopping on page 194, and just to highlight here where he's stating, the ducks, right? So the ducks are shaking that off. And when we were doing the reading, I was talking about, duck off a water's back and letting it just slide off of you. And that in itself is a great way for you to practice releasing the negativity that comes up with other people, and learning to transmute. So take that time and really do what he's saying here, and to allow yourself to become transparent and start working with those little things, so that you can release them and not identify them and not hold on to the negativity within the body. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for joining the Spiritual Gangsta Book Club. We are going to be getting into our next book probably in the next week or two. If you'd like to vote on the next book or give suggestions, reach out to me. Click the link in the email. If you'd like to check out all the other recordings of the Spiritual Gangsta Book Club, you can go to anchoredsoultherapy.com and find all of those there. As far as tonight, I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening or whatever time it is. I'm Shannon, aka the Spiritual Gangsta, and I'll see you in the future. Bye.